We good? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for October 2nd, 2018 at 6:34 p.m.
October 4th.
What did I say?
Second.
Oh. Oh, I'm looking at this. September 2nd. That's what I get for looking at the bottom of the agenda instead of the top. September 4th. Here we go. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. See if we can get that right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call, please?
Tony Engelberg.
Here, I think.
Lloyd Kernan.
Here.
Glenn Mitchell.
Here.
Pat Feeney.
Here.
A.C. Elray.
Here.
Stacy Steckley.
Here.
Ted Gursky.
Okay, moving on. Oh, we need a motion to, motion to excuse Ted.
Excuse Ted, thank you.
Support.
Okay, motion by AC, support by Stacy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, on to agenda approval. A couple of things on this. Like to, under new business number 4, add chickens and livestock. It's come to our attention that the township ordinances are actually much more strict than the village actually is. So we want to take a look at that. And under old business number 1, Holly Hills has told us they don't have anything to tell us. They are not here tonight. So unless you all have something you want to talk about, we can.
I did.
You did? Okay, then we will leave it out. We'll leave it on the agenda. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended with item number 4?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, motion by AC, support by Stacy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, moving on to public comment for items on the agenda only. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Please stand up and state your name for the record if you wish to speak. Come on up to the microphone, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't think Holly Hills wants to see what I have here, but my name's Cliff Pashota and I live at 16490 Tucker Road, Holly Township. I've had photographs taken and I'd like to pass out to the board as of Friday. 3 photographs. The first one would be Holly Hills from the sky and how the effluent is going into Lacey Lake. If you look to the bottom, you'll see that the pond's already full of nitrates. Should be blue, but it's green. Number 2 is a bigger picture that shows where Holly Hills is in relationship to the high school where the sewer is. It's a very short slant in this picture, and again you'll see that pond totally green. In the third picture, you'll see that, see that pond? The third picture, you'll see Lacey Lake. That pond is probably 10 yards to the north of the right of this picture. You got to understand that the river comes in here and the outlet goes to your mill pond. So pictures don't lie. My whole point was get these people to connect to the sewer. The board can keep these pictures. All right?
Just for clarification, when were these pictures taken?
Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Very, very recent. As of Friday. So, any questions to me?
No, thank you. We will.
I think the
thank you for pictures.
DEQ would not like to see these pictures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mark Taylor, 15566 Falk Road. Tony, did you get a chance to get that packet that I handed you into the other
Yep.
everybody's hands?
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody's got
That was a response letter or a request for a response from my August 2nd letter where I clearly defined 4 items of concern. And that was trying to get into your hands before this meeting tonight, but just wasn't going to happen with the holiday and everything else going on. We have runoff from the park going through an old site. This packet has also been put in Jerry Walker's hands, the Village of Holly. He has contacted me. We have not had a chance to sit down and discuss it. But more so than once again, I've put 4 things on a piece of paper. Other people have put things on a piece of paper. Since this is in not just public comment, this is an open agenda public comment, how do I get you guys to answer? Because this right here, crickets. This is what we're all getting, crickets.
Public comment is not the time where we are going to go back and forth.
Okay, when is that time?
We do have it, Commissioner Feeney asked for it to be on the agenda, and that's a time for us to talk about.
Okay, so you would, at one point, we could question and answer? What is that? When is
Not
that?
at this time. That would be during a public hearing.
During a public hearing?
Yes.
So I have to generate a public hearing? Or do you generate a public
We would
hearing?
generate a public hearing if it's necessary.
If it's necessary.
Yes.
If and when, but,
Well, there will be, prior to approval, there will be a public hearing. That's part of procedure.
okay. So prior to approval that may happen in 2 months from now, will you have done anything on these questions?
We are looking into them.
Okay. When would we get responses on those 4 questions?
That I can't answer for you.
Is it going to be a day before the site plan gets
Again,
approved?
I can't, truthfully, I can't give you an answer to that question because I don't know at this point.
It just seems like, as I mentioned in the bottom of that letter, we're being heard, but there ain't a whole lot going on in our favor that's not being generated by us personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once, going twice.
Stacy Taylor, 15566 Falk Road. Caught a few more people that have some better knowledge than I do working on things, but practical method for estimating the impact of land use change on surface runoff, groundwater, recharge, and wetland hydrology. This was Mark Cornwell, 1997. It was in the Township files. We have some big questions, and I think this right here needs to be revisited in a big way because we do have some major concerns over there. Something that was supposed to be read a couple weeks ago, and I probably don't have it in the right order here, but Ardith Regan, the village president back in 1992, 2 years after the consent judgment was already entered into, that's when they started to do the discharge, and that's when everything, 90% of the documents that we're working with is at that point, they realized, oh my gosh, they're going to discharge into wetlands, blah, 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 blah. But the questions that she presented and wrote a resolution, it's Resolution 92-15, whereas citizens from the Holly area have expressed great concern regarding the siting of the proposed 800-unit mobile home park to be located at East Holly and Falk Road in Holly Township, adjacent to the boundaries of Holly Village, and whereas the proposed DNR discharge permit may have major implications on the village future waste load allocations, and whereas there continues to be grave concern over the protection of sensitive wetlands contiguous to and within the proposed site and the long-term range, negative implications on the surrounding ecosystem, and whereas the DNR has judiciously determined that there shall be no wetlands hearing that would allow for in-depth evaluations and further studies on potential impacts of those wetlands, and whereas the implication of the proposed facility will have major traffic implications impacts on village streets immediately adjacent to the site with no financial plan to help subsidize the village taxpayers for the upgrade of those those thoroughfares, and whereas Holly Township is already grappling with financial constraints regarding their ability to service the outer township area with sufficient fire protection, and members of a servicing agency, the Northwest Oakland County Fire Authority, of which the Holly Village and Rose Townships are subsidizing members, may place an additional burden on those communities through the proposed project. And I can keep going on, I only have 3 minutes, but this was 92. This is 2 years after the consent judgment. Most of the things we're still asking for solutions, answers, questions, reports, etc., have not still been addressed. So it looks good on paper that Boss Engineering can make this look acceptable. It's not acceptable on the outside of the park or for the residents of this community. We are asking again for any and all help. I realize your hands are tied. I realize it's a tough position, but this is 2 years after the consent judgment was agreed upon, entered into. I appreciate all you're doing, but we have a lot of things that need to be addressed. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Denise Cantu, 15600 Falk Road. I know everyone keeps saying their hands are tied, they can't do anything, but I'm not satisfied with the answers. You have no clue what this is doing to our lives. Mark has asked for four questions to be answered for like a month and a half, maybe 2 months now. And someone has to be able to answer these. I feel like everyone is just so, the DNR, the DEQ, he calls them, nobody answers. There's so much cricket stuff going on that they feel that they can just ignore our questions, that we're so concerned. The water's turning green. I mean, now I found out that there's a dump on the other side that I live on. There's a dump here, now I have a dump here, and now I get Holly Hills runoff coming down to the dump to add into more. And someone made a comment on Facebook that, we don't have enough money to sell our homes. All we can do is complain about it. But why should I have to sell my home? I bought this home because I love it. And I'm not happy. Mark needs to we need to start getting some kind of answers from somebody. Help us find answers. How do we get these answers? How do we get the DEQ and the DNR to answer us? You know what? Today's my birthday, and I would rather be doing anything than being here right now. I am so shaken, mad, that all we've been doing is yakking our mouths for the last, 4 months, 5 months? No answers. And I know this is not the forum here today. We can't do it. We got to wait for a public hearing. But there's been public hearings, and there's still no answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Okay. Moving on to public hearings. This is for amendments to Chapter 32 zoning, Article X, the sign ordinance. Mike, do you want to present?
Sure. So for the past couple months, the Planning Commission has been reviewing the sign ordinance. A lot of this is based on addressing content neutrality. There was a Supreme Court case a couple years ago, Gilbert versus Reed, that essentially removed local control over messages of signs, right? So you can't really regulate what's on the sign. There's some, we've taken the approach that you can regulate commercial speech versus non-commercial speech, but that's essentially the line that can be drawn. We've also addressed some situations with the locations of freestanding signs. Originally in the ordinance there was a setback from the road right away. Well, when you consider the size of the road right away, by the time you add that additional setback in, signs would be so far off the road that they're essentially not readable. There are instances in the township today where signs are built essentially up to the right of way and they look appropriate. And so, based on the direction from the Planning Commission, we've addressed that in the ordinance to remove that setback so they're outside of the right of way on the property. But from a visual impact, it looks like it fits. We went through and addressed temporary signage. We have discussed window signage. I think overall the amendments that have been made to the sign ordinance have been done so in a manner to promote business, but while trying to address clutter and reduce any visual eyesores. Now, no ordinance is perfect. You know, I think we had a lot of discussion about window signs and what's, you know, the right character. But, you know, I think where we are today, we've gone over this a lot. We've tried to add some graphics, explaining the different types of signs. And I think we're at a point now where we're ready to make a recommendation to the Township Board.
At this time, does anybody from the public have anything they wish to ask, discuss, or on this? Actually, we need a motion.
You're right.
Yes.
Motion to go into
Public hearing, yes.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Pat and support by AC to go into public hearing on this. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So now, if anybody from the public has anything to say or ask about this ordinance, this is your time to step up and speak. Going once, going twice. Can I get a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
We'll let Lloyd jump in on that one. So we have a motion by AC, support by Lloyd to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay. Approval of minutes. We've got two sets of minutes here. Let's start with July 17th. The chair would entertain a motion.
Motion before we discuss a couple of small changes? Or
Well, no, if you've got, well, we can, yeah, if you've got changes, then we might as well get those out.
Page 3 of 3, there's just a couple minor things. It talks about Holly Hills, the second paragraph from the top, second line, Holly Hills Park from dumping. I think we're going to put dumping water into wetlands, but it's quite a different meaning if you just put dumping in there.
Where's that?
Page 3 of 3 for the first set of minutes, which is the June ones, right?
Under Lloyd's comments?
July 17th.
Yeah.
Starts out with the second paragraph starts Commissioner Kernan reported. In the second line it just says dumping. It really is referring to dumping water in the wetlands, but I just thought it should be modified because dumping kind of refers to something more than just water usually. Well, yeah.
So Lloyd probably did just say dumping, but I understand what you're saying.
It's a public record, it shouldn't just say dumping. But. And then more of a technical thing, it doesn't make any difference, but about halfway down, it mentions that I was to go to the meeting. Now I ended up going, but really Stacy was the one that was appointed to go and just wasn't able to go. So at the time this happened, it was should have said Stacy.
Where are you looking?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down. Starts out with Chairman Engelberg.
Oh.
And it's just at the time.
On which page are you looking?
Same page, page 3 of 3.
Oh,
at
okay,
that
I got
time
you.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't the one going. I did end up going. So the end is correct, but it really didn't. At the time this was taken, Stacy was the one going.
Right.
Okay.
It's kind of insignificant.
Yeah.
If you go back to my comment, it should say from discharging, not dumping.
Yeah, probably.
Discharging into the wetland.
Yeah, that's correct. It should probably say discharge.
Any other comments?
With those changes, then we would
Approve the, Jim?
approve
Okay.
the minutes.
Approve the minutes. Can I get a support?
Support.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Mitchell, support by Commissioner Feeney to approve the July minutes as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, moving on to August 1st. Again, the chair would entertain a motion.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Stacy and a support by Lloyd to approve the minutes of August 1st. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right. Communications, where is that letter? We want to read this into the record, or? Okay. What we have is a communication regarding the Fenton Township master plan, which basically is legally what they have to do to let us know that the plan is available for a 63-day review period, and basically what they have to do is send this to every neighboring township and village in case we would have any input on their master plan. So.
Has any of us taken a look at this?
I have not yet. It's actually on my agenda for the weekend. Any further discussion on this? Okay. Old business number 1, Holly Hill site plan. As I said, they did contact us to tell us that they had no new information for us. I do have a couple of things to share, but Pat, you wanted to bring this down, so let's.
Well, I think what I want to suggest, I was thinking we were going to have a discussion about it today, considering the site plan. My suggestion was going to be that we have, as part of the site plan, is that we have a runoff study done for the property on Holly Hills proposes, and that's all the whole site, not just Falk Road, but any other sites that they, any runoff anywhere else along the project too. And a second thing that I thought of that I think I'd like to see added in would be a test well in the Kern Marsh, and something that should be maintained by the Holly Hills since they are discharging into it. I don't believe that interferes with anything with the consent agreement because it is off property. The test well would be good to, if they're not going to connect up with the village water, they're going to be pumping more into that marsh, and I think we have a right to have some kind of knowledge of what's going on there, and I'd like to see both of those as part of the site plan. Now, I'd have to defer to our professional on, exactly how you would do, because I'm not going to claim to know any great knowledge how you would do, a runoff one, but I'm
so the engineer, right? That's one of the things that they should be looking at, right? Because there are runoff coefficients that they have to be met. There's requirements by the county that have to be met, and then there's township standards that have to be met. So as part of that engineer review, which I believe, when the engineer was here at the last meeting, he wasn't too happy with the information that he'd been given, and then additional information was presented at the meeting, and he hasn't had any time to review that. Holly Hills is still addressing some of the water flow issues. So I think that your comment should be noted, and we will ensure that the engineer is performing the runoff reviews. But it's my understanding that would be part of this typical review.
Now my question is on something on that, and I don't know if you could explain to me, not knowing a lot about runoff reports and that, how far out would that go? Is that just a matter of a few feet off the property, or would that encompass, an area? What size area would that encompass? Because, if we're just talking about running into the ditch alongside the property, that's not going to be of much, assistance to us.
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. I think that's a good question that we can follow up with the engineer. The next time we do have a site plan from Holly Hills engineer, will be here. So we can make sure that question is addressed as part of that.
Now, concerning the test well, is that something that an engineer could sit there and tell us this would be a good location, or would that be something that we would?
Yeah, once again, it's dealing with stuff below the ground, right? I can tell you about development and whatnot, but once you start adding the math in, that's when the engineer is appropriate.
I guess the question is the planning commission, we can't require it. The township who would pay for this, or how can we force Holly Hills to do this?
So I think that's a good question. Can you force them to do it? And again, the answer is I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's.
You know, again, right? I think this is a good question for the engineer that we can follow up on.
There's a lot of things we're discussing. We probably don't have much input other than recommend, perhaps.
Well,
the most we can do.
well, that's that's my well. I guess that's the question we need to have answered on that. Is like with the test well, they are discharging into township. You know, if we had an individual doing it, would we could we require them to you're dumping into your neighbor's marshland? Could we require them? Yeah, we'll give you the permit, but you got to monitor it somehow. I mean, I don't think that's too far-fetched. My only concern is that I understand, no criticism of the engineer, is that the engineer is looking at, pretty closely encountered, and I just don't know how far out, because this is something where my concern is erosion of a road. We have a dump site that, could be overwhelmed by runoff. Obviously, we just seen pictures of, runoff, that has nothing to do with, not on their property per se, but it's obviously being caused by their property. And I guess when you say about forcing, it's kind of a matter of, I think what the planning commission, my thought would be is that when we're doing this for the benefit of the whole community, safety of obviously the residents of the park, foremost, but in the end, we're looking at the impact that this project's going to have on the whole surrounding area. And if we limit the scope to a few feet one way or the other, I think we're doing a disservice to the residents.
Well, one of the things that we've got to discuss, we have to discuss, at the end of the day, I think we've got now 5 different agencies that we can submit letters of recommendation to. I know, at least I can fairly say that I know the township board will be doing that at some point. They'll be submitting letters. There is nothing saying that we as the planning commission can't do that as well. We just as a board need to discuss who's going to write the letter, and then we'd obviously have to vote to approve the letters as written. Mike?
Well, your approval is actually a recommendation to the Mobile Home Commission. So all your concerns are going to be part of your motion and part of that information that's submitted to the commission as part of the whole
and to the other 4, because I think there's 5 agencies altogether that we can submit our concerns to.
Sure.
So
yeah,
I would say
that's what you'd end up submitting for them.
So all of these things like what you're talking about, if we can't force, and as an environmentalist, I'm all about protecting water runoff. Whether or not we can force them to or not ourselves, there's nothing stopping us from strongly encouraging that into those agencies.
The consent judgment allows Holly Township to maintain its normal police powers.
Correct.
Right.
Can you define what those are? What those police powers are?
Could I? I could, just not right on the spot.
Okay, I mean, can we look at that?
So health, safety, welfare. So essentially what it means is not zoning, right? So, the zoning ordinance technically
Safety and welfare is water, right?
I would agree with that. Fire safety.
Yeah.
So we should try and exercise those powers, whatever those powers are. We should make sure we know what they are.
And I would say that's what's holding up this review process. Because if it was strictly on zoning, unfortunately, this would be done already.
Right.
But you've brought up your health, safety, welfare issues. So the fire is looking at it, and engineers are looking at it. And that's why we're not here tonight with a plan to review.
Speaking of fire, so it's not coming from me, would you talk about the meeting we attended at the fire hall?
Sure. It was brought up that there's questions about the ability to provide an adequate amount of fire flow. There's a requirement that they provide, I believe it's 1,000 gallons per minute to provide fire safety. We're not entirely sure that's being met currently. And 2, when the additional homes are added, we do not believe that would be able to maintain the level that they're at. So we've identified a number of options for Holly Hills to move forward with, installing a water tower connecting to the village, having a separate well. But we haven't had any response. And at the end of the day, they have not shown that they're able to meet that minimum 1,000 gallons per minute for the fire safety.
And without being able to do that, correct me if I'm wrong, this doesn't, we
Well,
don't have.
again, you're making a recommendation, right? So your recommendation would be denial due to a health, safety, welfare issue. And then it would go to the Mobile Home Commission. They would give the applicant the ability to respond to the concerns that we have, and if they feel like it's being met in a manner that is consistent with the applicable laws, then they would approve it.
Does it come back to the township from them, or is that?
Once it gets up to the commission, the commission's the one who has the final say.
Okay. But it goes planning commission, but not to the township for approval? You just mentioned planning commission. I just want to make sure that we.
Yeah, I don't believe it actually goes to township board.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that's
Sure.
one of the concerns of what level they're at. While I was looking that up, the email I got about the fact we wouldn't be talking about this really said they're continuing to address concerns and would resubmit. We don't know what they're really looking at, correct? We don't know at all what they're asking us to table it for now.
Right.
But it sounds like they are working on something, but they didn't tell us even a clue what it was.
No. Right.
Okay. Because it does make, are they working on issues we were talking about, or is it something in the small details that, would be worked out anyways? I guess was my concern.
Anybody else on this? Pat, are you good? Okay. Fine.
I think for the audience, the MDOT, or Oakland County Road Commission, is the one that deals with the road issues. We have nothing to do with that, correct? So they need to address, and it doesn't sound like you're getting much luck with them, but we don't have any say in that. DEQ would be the one that they need to be addressing, and I'm not sure what level, and I probably not getting good responses, but that's the one with the runoff in that.
Right.
I'm trying to help them, that's what they're looking
absolutely.
for, and is what some of the things we can't do much about. I'm new on the board, so I don't know all these things, but it just looks like a lot of things that you're asking for, we don't have any control over.
No, and that's, the reality is it's got to go above our heads. I mean,
The Mobile Home Commission, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be too successful with, because, I think it's a lobby group controls that probably, and
Right.
and so that we can only have minimal effect, but we can recommend things, but they're probably still going to accept it based on criteria they already have.
So again, right, the criteria that they're going to look at in zoning, again, it doesn't meet the zoning, district, but they're going to ignore that.
Mm-hmm.
Health, safety, welfare, fire safety, I believe, is something
And that's what we've been working on. It sounds like
that you can, that's your hook.
That's not something they can ignore.
But runoff is what they've been talking about a lot, and that to me is a big thing too. But I'm not sure. I don't think we, other than the recommendation based on what you're saying.
I think that if the DEQ issues the appropriate permits, that's.
But the DEQ is what they need to be addressing, really, because
Right.
we as a board really can't do much towards that. It's
Correct.
going to make that decision. Well, that's why we have congressmen too. Is to, I know.
Any,
That green pond
Okay.
is coming through.
this is, unfortunately, this is not time for back and forth.
Sorry.
It's okay. No problem. Anybody else on the board for this?
Do we write, is it possible for us to write a recommendation to the DEQ? Is that one of the agencies that you're referring to?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the engineer is doing the runoff, the township engineer is doing the runoff study, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then we'll be presented with that when they produce their report, correct?
Correct.
Lloyd knows that runoff was an issue from the very beginning, and it's still.
Still is one today.
It always will be.
Yep.
And in regards to the lake, is there testing that will be going on with that in particular?
So I think that that's a discussion we'll have with the engineer, so he's
With the
aware.
engineer.
And
Okay.
I think if you guys give those pictures to Karen, since she's the clerk, then we can get those to the appropriate people to
To do
Yeah.
the appropriate.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to old business number 2.
Were we actually supposed to formally table that? That's what we're asked to do.
Well, no, we didn't table it because we just discussed it. Tabling it would have meant that it wouldn't have been on the agenda at all, and we wouldn't have been
Okay.
talking.
All
about
But
it.
we wouldn't be, we're not approving it.
Right, but it doesn't matter as long as
I-
once we
sorry.
decide to start talking about it, which is fine. You don't at that point we're not tabling anything. So, moving on to old business number 2, amendments to Chapter 32 zoning, Article X, the sign ordinance.
So we're doing a motion.
Yeah, Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
I will so move.
Okay, we have a motion by Stacy.
I just had a quick question. There's been no changes, right?
No.
Since our last discussion?
Correct.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Stacy and a support by AC to approve the sign ordinance as presented. Any discussion?
Are we proposing to approve it or to submit it to the township board for?
Well, we're going.
recommendation for
Recommendation. Yeah.
I support.
Oh, we got AC supported it. Do we have any discussion? Glenn?
Well, I guess so. It says amendments to. Aren't we just? Isn't this a whole new submission?
Not totally. There was some parts we didn't change, was there not?
Right.
Yeah, we've already.
Yeah.
Right, but we already reviewed that.
Yeah, we already had an
Well,
ordinance.
there was a sign ordinance. We have it where this whole process has been amending it.
Okay, I just thought we
Yeah.
were replacing the current one. with-
Yeah.
well,
Good hunk of it, we are.
The amendments are usually going to say this is what it was, this is what changed, and
Yeah.
then submitting as a package, aren't we? So, I don't. That's
Yes.
just a technicality. but-
Yeah.
And our
I believe
changes,
you are correct.
it shows our changes.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Roll call for this, please.
Stacy Steckley,
Yes.
AC Alray,
Yes.
Pat Feeney,
Yes.
Glenn Mitchell,
Yes.
Lloyd Kernan,
Yes.
Tony Engelberg.
Yes. All right. Hopefully we don't see that one again for a while.
So you just jinxed yourself.
I know.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. All right. All right, new business item number 1. Yeah, we've got to move some meeting dates around. November 6th is election night, and what is January 8th?
It's a village meeting.
National
It's a village meeting.
championship.
Yeah.
It's a village meeting in this room.
Oh, same night as the village. Okay.
You know, for historical purposes, we can always go back to the
We
township.
could.
Good old times.
Well, the
Yeah.
only thing we lose there is the ability to video.
Oh.
And I know how much I know how much you 5 like to be seen on camera.
Yeah.
So.
Right,
Gotta call makeup again.
Yeah. So let's knock these off one at a time. Let's talk about November 6th.
November 6th.
And we know we're not doing any Mondays. You are
I
still
was
doing
gonna
something.
say,
Are you
if we
still-
could avoid a Monday and Wednesday, that
Yeah.
would be great.
Thursday of that week, would that work?
That's fine by me.
Thursday, that's the
8.
8th.
Are you?
I can make that meeting.
Let's say what?
Everybody can. Yeah.
Yeah, JV football will be done by then, so I'll have.
I'm good with me.
I feel so unimportant. I have nothing on my
You
calendar.
know, I gotta be at this meeting, but I can post that and get out of that.
And the one thing I honestly forgot to do was check to see. I don't think the village
How about Friday?
Thursday, I wouldn't.
first Thursday of the month.
not that
Actually,
I
it wouldn't be the first Thursday; it'd be the second.
First Thursday would be the first.
Yeah, so it'd be the second Thursday.
Right, second Thursday.
It's even better.
Well, we have a meeting in between time with that.
I'd like
Yeah.
It'd be an issue
So what?
with
Let's
that. You know,
January 8th work for everybody. Or
November.
not January 8th,
November.
November 8th. I'm looking at January now. November 8th.
November 8th, Thursday.
Yeah.
Now, what was
That would
wrong
be
with
fine.
what was wrong with the first election?
November 6th is election night?
No, the first Thursday.
First Thursday.
That's the 1st.
November 1st.
Oh, November 1st.
That's a month early.
November 8th would work better for me.
Better for you.
Okay.
I can make the 1st, but I would prefer the 8th.
So can I get a motion to move that first meeting to November 8th? Obviously, again, if we realize there's some kind of big conflict. we
Make a
can-
motion that we move the November 6th meeting to November 8th.
Support?
Okay, we have a motion by Pat, support by Stacy to move that meeting to November 8th. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, now let's talk about January.
What about the 3rd? It's the first Thursday. No?
Well, just
No,
not
we're
really
going
good.
too fast. Yeah, that is too close.
The next week is worse though.
We're going to be
Probably
recovered
third, I
still.
think.
What do we made ours on the 8th, right?
Right, right.
Okay, and then we said,
Once again, if this Thursday works for November, would it work for January?
January
too?
10th?
Yeah. Keep it the same
Fine by
week, you
me.
know, that's,
hold on.
I may not be here, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Been gone
I have
week
meetings.
before.
I'm giving up one already for
oh,
November.
you're on that.
Or for the next one, so I'd have to miss.
No, that's, yeah, okay, let's not do that.
We can do one of those on Monday or Wednesday. That's
what?
far enough out, I can get somebody to cover class
On what day?
Wednesday.
on a Monday or
second would be-
Wednesday.
The second would be better for me.
Second Wednesday, that's,
No, we're talking
No,
just the second.
January 2nd, you say.
January 2nd.
no, I'm saying the second Wednesday of the, oh,
Oh.
January 2nd. and-
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the
Moving
first
off the whole week.
Wednesday. That's the village planning commission is the.
I was going to say that, this, yeah.
That's 2/7 after
Okay,
the first.
You can stay out of the moose for
Gotta
one
clean
night.
it up. No, I won't be at the, never mind. So we're looking at which
Thursday the
day?
10th.
The 9th or 10th?
Well, the 9th is the
Right.
village planning meeting.
Good, because I can't
No,
make
the-
that.
Are they the second,
It's a tough, it's not good for you.
they're the second Wednesday or no?
No, because I'll miss that
No,
meeting again.
Tuesday.
Second Tuesday. Second Tuesday's village council.
Second.
And library.
Second and fourth.
I'm confused. I don't know.
I thought the village planning was the fourth Wednesday of the month.
Or you could just go into the next week, following Tuesday, make it a week later.
Could do the
The
15th.
15th?
Yeah.
15th would be.
Oh, yeah, 15th.
Yeah, that's better.
That's
That
a
work
lot,
for
that's
you,
better
Mike?
for me.
I will make
That's on
that
a
work.
Tuesday.
You'll make that work? Okay.
What day?
Yeah, yeah.
The 15th of January.
I will make a motion
I'll second. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
to
ahead.
move our January 8th meeting, 2019, to January 15th, 2019.
So what day of the week is that then?
6:30.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So January 1st, I mean, our January 1st meeting, right? Or,
No,
January
During
8th.
oh, yeah,
eighth
so
meeting.
I did that.
It's a Tuesday.
It is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Third Tuesday.
Does that
Make
work?
it 15.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
We'll make it work?
If
Okay.
it works for you guys, we'll make it work in our.
All right.
Okay.
So I have a motion by Stacy, support by AC to move that meeting to January 15th. Any further discussion?
So, that works for me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, new business item number 2. Mike, talk to us about wind energy.
Oh, right.
This
Wind
was
energy.
interesting.
All right. So we have gone through the process of creating a solar energy ordinance. Well, the sister ordinance to that is wind energy. Let's create a little presentation for you guys to review. These sort of go over the things that we need to consider as we go through the ordinance. A lot of this is the same as solar energy, right? It just has a lot more visual impact than solar energy does. So, again, right, we need to create solid definitions for what it is we're trying to regulate, identify the zoning process, come up with some height restrictions and setback restrictions, consider the environmental factors, what screening we can reasonably do, and then the big part, again, is the abandonment and decommissioning plans. So when we talk about wind energy systems, there's really 2 types, right? You have, again, for personal usage, and then for generation, right? Commercial generation. your personal on-site, got a little picture there. That's 75-foot tall, wind turbine to use for your property, compared to a utility scale. So last week I went up to Union Township, which is Mount Pleasant, driving up 127, and
They're all over?
they're everywhere.
Yep.
I did my best to safely take a picture. It didn't turn out too well. But you can see them from miles away, right? Due to their height, and generally the surrounding areas are typically, if there's vegetation, it's low. So we get back to the character of Holly. That's something that we need to keep in mind as we're developing, height restrictions and setback restrictions. Approval process, again, this is going to be similar to solar energy, right? For your on-site personal use, we need to develop a reasonable set of standards so that you can permit it for personal use. And then set up your standards for special land use for your large-scale generation. Now you may find that these aren't necessarily meeting the character for personal use, and that you want to consider that as special land use. So that's something that we should think about as we're reviewing the draft ordinance. But again, right, it's getting back to what's the character for the township. So next is height restrictions. We have a little graphic here showing you some representatives of additional tall things to show you how these turbines look compared to it. They're about the same height as the Statue of Liberty, which is pretty impressive. They are taller than the great sequoia trees that you find in California. So you're not going to screen these. It doesn't matter how many trees, how tall the trees are, they're not going to screen these. Typically what you're seeing for restrictions is that for personal use, 75 feet is generally in that number, that range. For the utility scale, 400 feet, which again, that's pretty massive. Now, one of the things you guys have that not all communities do is that you're close to Bishop Airport, right? So we do have considerations for that. One of the things that we are going to require, these facilities require lights on top of their structures, right, for the airplanes. FAA requires this. The newest technology are radar based, so 90% of the time they're off. But when the plane's radar is within a certain range, they'll kick on then. So it's not a constant just flashing light. And we've run this by DTE and consumers, and this is something they're on board with. So this is not something that's going to surprise anyone that's looking to do this type of facility. We're going to review setback restrictions. Typically, we're looking at 1.5 times the height of the tower or the turbine. And the reason is because you have to have a fall zone, right? Because if these are going to fall over, we want to make sure that they're not going to fall over onto something. And then we start getting into the environmental factors, right? So again, similar to the solar, septic system avoidance, right? We don't want them putting on there. We can talk about floodplain avoidance. It's not as, they're putting towers up, so if they're able to, if the soils are conducive to what they want to do, it may not be that big of an issue. Protected lands, again, farmland preservation. Site stabilization, so we don't want them to come in, just clear the land and then leave it. We want it to be restored with some sort of natural vegetation. And then sound and shadow flicker. So these are some of the big concerns that people have, right? How loud are these? Well, if you're standing right underneath one, it's about the same sound as a lawnmower, right? So that's about 105 decibels. If you move out, about 25 meters from there, it's about the sound of a blender at 90 decibels. By the time you move out to 100 meters, it is the equivalent of your in-window air conditioner unit. And then by the time you are 400 meters away, it's just ambient noise, right? The hum of your refrigerator. So again, right, we're talking about setbacks. We want these setbacks, not just from the on-site, right? We're also concerned about the neighboring properties. Make sure they're set back far enough that the noise is not an issue. And then shadow flicker. So this is the, as the turbines turn, you get the strobe effect. Now, realistically, at the angle that the sun is here in Michigan, it's not as big of an issue as it is in other locations in the country. However, it's still something that should be addressed. And so we're going to have regulations relating to that. And then the last two, of course, decommission and abandonment plans. Right? We've already gone through this with the solar energy. We found language that your attorney is happy with. We're going to modify that to these. And that's, you know, our preview, what's coming up. Next month, we're going to give you a draft ordinance to start discussing. And if you have any questions or concerns that, you know, you want me to focus on, you know, let me know. But I think we're, based on what we went through with solar, I think we can make this go pretty quickly.
So I wanted to tell you thank you, because the way that these have been presented as of late has been very helpful.
Yep.
So I wanted to let you know
Thank
that,
you.
Yep.
that I really appreciate the effort that you put into these. So.
You showed one that fell over.
Yep.
What kind of wind event does it take to do that?
Well, it depends on the
tornado
structural
or-
integrity of the, you know, the tower itself. You know, I think this one, there was some catastrophic failure that may not necessarily have been from, you know.
Was that in Michigan, do you know? Or?
No, that was not in Michigan.
Have we had someone looking in this area or nearby?
Not that I know of. Generally, it's farther north or farther south. I think so they look for large areas of land, right? You have that. So it's best to be protected so that, you know, they either know, all right, these are what the standards I have to meet, or it's not worth it, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right, okay.
Is there any kind of ranking so that you could look at Holly and say, as it goes for really being a potential area for this, commercial-wise, I guess?
You know, there are wind maps, so I will share that with you guys, so you can see what quality of wind it is here. Now, I remember when we were doing this at Grand Blanc, the wind was not very good. Bishop was too close. All those factors, it's not likelihood that a commercial generation would come in.
Right.
But from your personal use,
Right.
you know, that's
could be.
very reasonable.
Mm.
And that's, you know, likely.
They aren't as big either.
That is correct.
Right. They're not like it.
And it's more in character with, you know, a more, you know, rural community also.
I did some research.
How about the slaughter of birds?
So there are certain things we can consider. We do have some language in there that addresses those types of impacts that they have to provide information relating to that.
So
I
we
did some
don't,
research on this some years ago and found that the wind just wasn't strong enough in this area to really justify it, make it cost effective.
I would generally agree with that.
Same
But,
thing with the solar. It's still it's iffy if we have enough sunny days to make it.
you know, the thing to consider, the technology is improving every day, right? Things are becoming more efficient. There's new technology, so you know, sometimes we do things just to protect ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Do you need an official request from us to come back with the ordinance or no?
No,
we're good.
I was going to do that for next month.
Can we have some information on the wind, what Lloyd was
Yeah.
talking about, the research?
Yeah, there's a wind map that MSU
Yeah.
has produced, and I'll share that with you guys.
Okay.
If you think about where these are located now, it's up in the thumb,
Mhm.
it's
It
up along
is,
the
yeah.
water, it's where there's flat, not a lot of trees where the wind can blow. That's where it works the best. And you don't have that here.
Yep.
Fortunately.
Any further discussion? Okay, so we don't need to make a motion or anything on this today?
Nope.
All right. New business, item number 3, let's talk about dumpsters.
Indeed.
Amy, do you want to,
Yeah,
since
let's
this was,
go on.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
can. So we have about, and it fluctuates, between 8, 12 or more personal dumpsters throughout the township at any given time. Some are located within the public right-of-way, some are within people's driveways, some are within people's yards. we only have regulation, code of ordinance regarding dumpsters in the respect to the blight ordinance, which allows them to have a dumpster on their property for the time that they have an open building permit. Now, that does not allow me to enforce on the personal. It just only allows me to say, hey, we don't have anything that says that you can have this. So there is one in particular that is right off of the side of the road, and I have received complaints about it because of its location. When the company is dumping it, it closes off the road for any given period of time. So what we had found is that there are, because we are the township and we do not extend trash pickup as part of the package for taxpayers, they are to employ their own their own trash pickup. For some people, during some times, for instance, there was a gentleman that had had some kidney surgery, and it was easier for him to have that right there and accessible and have somebody come there and pick it up and haul it away. People that are, there's one that's a hobbyist, so he has an abnormal amount of trash because he does a lot of woodworking, and there's other things that he uses that creates a lot. And then we also have some small group homes, not necessarily something as big as Mission Point, but to where there's a few people within the home that they are caring for. And of course, with elderly, there is an uptake in as far as sanitary items and trash of general nature. So it's hard to argue with somebody that has that they need to pay that extra pickup fee each week and have to haul it all the way down to the road. As we know, township parcels, there are some really long driveways to where you're not going to want to be hauling this dumpster load of trash to the end of your driveway often. And then cost base for some families, it makes sense due to either the large size of their family or, again, for having multiple families within one space, that it's cost effective for them to have these small personal dumpsters. And you can see them on Addis Road, Kurtz Road, Evans Road, throughout all four quadrant, all four quadrants of the township. So it would be nice if the Planning Commission would amend that part of the blight ordinance or come up with a dumpster type regulation for trash that would give a direction as to exactly where these dumpsters should be located, if there should be an enclosure, and in what type of enclosure, to where it's maybe just not a dumpster set off the side of the road, as nicely set as it may be, or just, now we have bright green dumpsters. They're not, brown or dark green always. They're now lime green that are either right off the road or just sitting off of somebody's driveway. So then now we can not only screen that in like a blight manner, but also if you've ever been through the drive-through at McDonald's, you can see that sometimes those enclosures actually help to keep the runoff in that specific area. So it would be great from a code enforcement standpoint if we could address this to allow it or continue to not allow personal dumpsters within the township.
How does the village handle these situations?
I have not seen any personal dumpsters outside of, again, for the use of improvement with an open building permit. So in the village, you'll only see those when somebody is doing a renovation of some sort, that they would need a personal roll-off dumpster for a certain amount of time.
Can we look at the village and just use that?
I have not been able to find anything.
I don't think
So that's not a typical regulation, right? Residential dumpsters.
Yeah, I haven't been able to find anything in even surrounding communities.
Now there are, general standards that that apply to dumpsters, right? Screening methods. Typically for commercial, right, it's done in two ways, right? Block wall 2 feet above the height of the dumpster, or trees, shrubs, some sort of greenery blocking it. I suppose some sort of sturdy, hardy material fence additionally. Now, up at the road, on a residential property, I don't know of any community.
Can I
feel
can I
that
ask you a
becomes a
question,
public
Mike? Would you have resources that you, no, it's stumping on you, but where you might be able to find out if there's any, like township, because I'm thinking if there's a township that does have a dumpster one, that maybe we might get some ideas from that.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of like scratching my head exactly. You know, I get it, you know, and the blight and that, I get that part of it, but how do you...
Well, the village does have an ordinance that says people can't leave their trash cans out at the side of the road all week.
Right.
So,
I believe they have an ordinance on dumpsters, because I complained about one here on East Holly, Maple Street, a couple years. A blue one that sat there for years.
yeah.
And I complained with the village, and it was gone, based on the time it had been there. So there must be some limited time period or some part.
But you know, I guess when you're looking at the village and some of that, you might have a hard time matching that up because of the fact of most of it is going to be for commercial. And like you said, what you were probably speaking of was something that was totally blight, period, because it wasn't done properly.
In the front yard.
But I'm thinking, as Amy has stated, you know, there's a lot of reasons why someone would have a permanent dumpster, and I'm just wondering if there's another township possibly out there, or even a municipality that's decided that they're going to allow personal, you know.
I've asked, I'm a member of the Michigan Association of Code Enforcement Officers, and I go to that monthly meeting, and I have asked that, and I've asked that on their public forum, and I've asked that within our little emails, and nobody has, that's within that communicating sector of that organization, been able to provide anything. And I also did kind of a sweep of the Municode, and I wasn't really able to find anything that specifically talked about that. There's mention of dumpsters commercial-wise, how long they're allowed to be there, just like we have within our blight ordinance.
You know, I think there's really two questions you need to ask yourselves. Right? One, is it appropriate in a residential district? And then two, if it is, where is the appropriate location? Right. Those are really what you need to decide. Because honestly, if it doesn't really matter if another community does it, right? Is it right for Holly? That's
well, you know, no, I understand that, you know, eventually it comes down to that. But, you know, like there was a suggestion, you know, use the village. Well, the houses are close together, and regardless of where you put it on the property, it's going to be, you know, someone could consider it unsightly. Where we kind of certain rural areas where, you know, if it's back over here behind the garage, it's not bothering anybody. It's not detracting from, you know, from anybody, you know, another piece of property. You know, I guess that's my thought is if we could find something that, you know, well, I guess you could look at someone else's ordinance, township, say their trash cans. Because, I mean, I know it's a smaller item, but the fact is if you saw another one that said where they would locate trash cans, you know, like maybe like a Redford Township or Commerce Township, it's like, you know, we're just not going to let you throw your trash cans anywhere you want. I guess you could maybe shape that into something. I just find it kind of difficult with the idea of trying to find some place of, you know, what exactly would be appropriate, you know.
Yeah,
I've had it for a while. The question is the main complaint, is they're near the road so they're visible all the time?
No, there's multiple. So there's ones that they consider it, you know, people want to know, well, do we have regulation for that? Because they're looking at this bright green dumpster all the time. And then there's some where, you know, there's one in particular that the gentleman works in resale. So he takes on large amounts of things and then obviously exports a lot of things. And while he masks that business and that home occupation, while the excess of the trash sometimes is in excess of the dumpster. If we were able to possibly enforce some way of screening that, then that would possibly alleviate that. Or we don't allow them at all.
So it sounded like someone would be in the road right away, and I can't imagine that would be allowed. That would be violating something already. And that would be a way to do that, because if you're leaving it there all the time, it's road right away. That's even a danger for vehicles running into them or whatever.
My thought was that it would most likely be good to look at it from the standpoint of an accessory structure, being that people are not only asking to retain personal dumpsters, but then you have neighboring parcels that are asking you to mask it or screen it in some way. So whether you're asking for fencing or a wall or some simple landscaping to enclose it, that you're kind of thinking of one specific permanent area for this to take place. So maybe looking at as an accessory structure or a temporary accessory structure. I'm not sure how that would go.
So I'm thinking almost a special land use, right? Because it's not, in my personal opinion, right? Driving through Holly, I don't think that it's a character that we want to see everyone develop. But there's probably some situations where it is appropriate, right? And that's sort of what the special land use is for, right? You can put additional conditions on. There is a public hearing notice, right? So neighbors are going to be able to voice their concern about the location. It's not a perfect process, but it's, you know.
But be careful what you ask for, because my first is some of these people, instead of having a bigger dumpster that covers everything, now we're going to have 10 big cans out there.
Well, and that's why you would
And
come
those
and
10
have
cans
an
are still a lot better than the garbage bags you have sitting, and I think we should realize that. I know it doesn't everybody like those blue cans or whatever color they are, but they do a good job of keeping animals out of the wind from catching all that stuff. And I don't want to.
What does
Yeah, I
that?
know what you're trying to make it more, but you got to be careful what we do here, because it could make it worse instead of better.
Do we have an ordinance that tells people they can or can't leave their garbage cans out at the side of the road all week?
No.
Okay.
You know, normally, a concern is the number of waste companies picking up, the number of trucks coming on a daily basis.
Yeah, on our roads.
Which impacts our road, but also the noise factor, and a lot of times, and I know we're not, I guess we are residential overall in the township, but normally they could limit it to a one hauler in the community.
Right, you know, we have private neighborhoods that you have to where trucks aren't going to be able to get back there. They're private roads, they're taken care of by associations. The increased traffic would definitely increase the erosion of the road. We have spots back like Greenleaf and whatnot back in the Great Lakes sub to where it's really makes much more sense for one whole section of the neighborhood to be able to bring it to one location to where one truck can come in and out, or else, you know, they're very narrow roads. They're
Right.
not set to road commission standards.
It is about 4 different trucks that go in there.
Yeah, and there are, absolutely.
Small area, but 4 different trucks.
And if we force some of these back in, garbage companies might not be able to access them with their trucks because of the
Absolutely
size of
correct.
But
the driveways that.
we do have something on the books saying that just having trash like out.
That's accumulation of trash and blighting factors. That's within the blight ordinance.
Maybe the township could provide waste service.
So, how? Just out of question, it's on the subject, but slightly off. What is our ordinance right now for commercial? Because I noticed driving by the academy, their dumpsters are just sitting out with no cover, no.
There are some other commercial entities also, and I'm afraid that, as far as I know, and I've looked, and I want to say that I did my due diligence, the only portion of our code of ordinances that addresses dumpsters is within the blight ordinance, which allows people to have during an open building permit. There is nowhere, as far as I know, and I've looked, that addresses dumpsters, personal or otherwise, commercial, within our code of ordinances.
So you're saying what you're seeing right now, you could go and say you got to get rid of it, period, end of report. So.
Which would allow us, if we wanted to revisit this completely, to include putting some kind of enclosures on commercial, and they would have, and
Because you do have commercial entities that do have dumpsters, one on each side of the parking lot, just sitting.
So that, you know, so your standard, right? They have to have a concrete pad of X amount of inches, X amount of feet in front of the dumpster, doors with wheels on them so that they can open and close, height of the enclosure 2 feet above, you know, the height of the dumpster, and then masonry wall, fence, or landscaping. That's the standard that you're going to find for every
Every community, yep.
Every
It's
community.
basically the village has it, that's
So,
exactly
you
what
know,
the village
that's
has.
just something we, you know, if you're gonna consider this, that should be 100% what you do for commercial. And then you need to decide, do you want to allow this for residential? And then if you do, well, what does that mean, and what standard, which of those commercial standards do you want to apply to it?
What do you think we let Mike come up?
Yeah, I
Some
mean, can you?
suggestions,
Yeah.
and maybe we direct stuff to you, Tony, suggestions we
Yeah,
might
that's
have
fine.
on this. We can pass it along to Mike.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not against the idea. I think there are reasons people would need them. I just don't necessarily think there's a reason to have them sitting on the edge of the road for where everybody's driving by or down our beautiful streets that, bam, there's a giant dumpster sitting right there.
Well, that could probably be addressed without going much further. That could be pretty straightforward. You know, you can't have it sitting in your car. You can only have it for so long. That I think we could probably do without. But coming up with something for people for permanent or long term.
Well, she's saying some of these people, if I'm understanding you right, have had these sitting on the side of the road permanently.
There is
or?
one.
Oh,
There
there's
is
one.
one that has, it's specifically been placed there. There's been, you know, there's not a cement pad, but you can see that there has been specifically, you know, a pad of some sort put there. Trees have been removed at some point, and it's within the public road right of way.
Well, no, I was saying was separate the two. You do one, you go after with obviously violations by any means, you know, and make that clear.
But then there
and then
are
come up
some
with a
that
separate
are
one.
right up close to the home that has a 200-foot driveway.
Well, that's where
You
I
know,
think
and
Mike
it just
might
so
need to
happens that
explain
it
to us
has
what
no
would be-
tree frontage, so that you can see right up the drive.
Well, you know, I run into the problem with the, it's not really a problem, it's just kind of interesting situation, is that the village came up with that your garbage cans have to be behind the
front
plane of your,
Yep.
well, what they call the front of my house, most people would call the side of my house. And where they say I can put my garbage cans, it's the front, actually, what most people would consider, it's the way it's situated. And I think you might run into that a lot of with the properties out there. If we're saying, you know, so that's something where I think it's going to be take a little bit of creativity to come
Well,
through. You know?
if we do special land use,
then
we can look at each
one.
We can have it. We can have a set of standards,
Right.
but apply them with some common sense based on the individual properties. So, can we give you some homework?
Yeah, no, that's going to be, you know, the commercial part, right? I can do that in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
the residential, that's going to take some creative thinking.
Do we need a motion or? Is it
Yeah,
just-
let's make one. Make
a
this all
motion
official.
that
Like.
we refer this to Mike to come back with some recommendations at our next meeting, or when would be a good time? Next meeting? Next meeting.
Support.
Okay, motion by Pat, support by Lloyd to get Mike into the dumpster business. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 4. Amy, if you want to kind of introduce this, since you got...
This is me again.
Yeah.
So within, obviously, it's the time of year for chickens. And this started in May. We currently, under our Class 3 animals, you have to have 2.5 acres to have any number of chickens. It really doesn't say, you know, that you can't even have one. So 2.5 acres for some of our residential areas does not make sense, and for actually a lot. But we are seeing that with the right to farm and things like that, and the encouragement of home farming and, you know, small chicken coops and whatnot, that there are a lot of people that are doing that within their backyard. So backyard chickens. And I have had complaints, you know, there's the rooster crow and whatnot, so it becomes a noise issue. However, being that the township allows 6, I believe
Village.
now.
The village, yes.
The village allows 6 now.
Yep.
And then what are their average lots are ½ acre?
Not even.
Not right, at best. It seems that maybe we might want to do some type of change to that class 3 animals to allow chickens or backyard chickens, poultry within those smaller lots.
So the village ordinance in a nutshell basically says no more than 6 birds. I don't remember if they have the size of the coop is regulated or not. So I'm not going to say that. No roosters, no slaughtering of animals on the premises, that kind of thing. And you can't let them free range. So like with my 4, I'll let them out in my backyard, but only when I'm out there. And if they start to wander too far, I'm getting my little rake and hurting them back where they belong.
80 square feet is the maximum for the coop.
For the village? Okay.
And currently in the class 3 animals, it does give specific as to making sure that they do have shelter, making sure that they are enclosed into a fenced area, and making sure that the feces and the runoff from that is properly taken care of. So it's just really the size of the lot that has become a problem. I would have to say probably taken at least 10 of these within this season. And there's a lot of people that don't call and complain. So I know that there are small lots and small pockets of residential areas within the township where they do have chickens and no one complains. Sure. It usually sometimes does become a neighbor-to-neighbor issue, or if they're allowing them to roam free,
right.
Or if they do have roosters, especially if they have more than one, and I don't even know how that's possible. So, and then that's, a lot of the times been the question is, well, can I just get rid of the rooster? So then the noise issue, for the ones that it's just the noise, then the noise issue is done, but everything else is good. And then also it does within our ordinance talk about setbacks from homes, from neighboring lots and neighboring homes, which is also covered in the right to farm as well. So there'd be two avenues to be able to enforce from that. But however, right now, under 2.5 acres, technically, we're not allowing it at all.
Would it be as simple as eliminating the 2.5 acres, or
yeah, only C1 is what I was
well,
going to propose.
Do we need to?
Do we want to limit, basically copy the village ordinance and limit the number of animals?
Why don't I jump in here?
Yeah.
Because you have multiple different zoning districts for residential, right? They're not all equal, right? So you have your agriculture, you have your single family, R1, R2, as well as single family, suburban residential, rural estate, right? So agricultural, suburban residential, so 5 acres, 1.5 acres, rural estate, 2.5 acres. Those 3 are kind of like in this box over here.
Right.
Then you have your R1 and R2, which is 1/2 acre and 1 acre, in this box over here. So thinking big picture, right? If you view your R1 and R2 more similar to the village, right? Maybe you just copy this over for those zoning districts, and then you look at what's in there right now, right? Because these are your larger lots.
Because class 3 is more than just chickens.
Right, but the definition class. So class 3, right? So you have 3 different classes of animals. All right, class 1 is domesticated. Class 2 are large farm animals, and class 3 are your small ones, which are rabbits and poultry.
Which I have a rabbits right now too. I have a rabbits issue right now too.
And so the village, right? They've addressed the rabbits and poultry, right? So your class 3 are essentially, the village ordinance. And I guess where I'm coming from is for your R1 and R2, right? So your single family homes that are still larger than village lots, but most consistent in character. This may be a very good, at the very least, a base for that, and maybe you loosen it up. Because if you limit it to 6 in your R1 and R2, maybe that's not the right number for your ag.
No, I agree.
Your suburban residential and estate.
And go ahead.
Oh, no, go on.
I was just going to ask, just for the public and just for so let's say we allow whatever we're going to allow. If the Pulte homeowners association says we don't want them at all, they're okay to go ahead and make that determination.
Right, that's going to be their own enforcement, though.
Yeah.
Township's not going to enforce it.
Okay. Pat?
Oh,
That was yours?
Yeah,
Okay.
they don't attack fences.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to attack chickens.
Right. No, I think it's. I was shocked that somebody living in our rural township could not have hens and get fresh eggs, and so I think this is definitely something we need to look at.
I agree. Because we're talking about like areas of Quick Road, that wouldn't be allowed to have chickens.
Right.
When you look at the size of those parcels, but then you can see that they're pretty wooded and still pretty rural, but still, according to your current ordinance, not allowed to have Class 3 animals.
So, I will go ahead and make a motion to ask Mike to come up with something for us for the next meeting to.
I'll support. I like your idea.
Yeah.
Of what you were saying about the different
I like to hear
classifications.
Glenn's thought on
Say, usually Glenn has got his hand up, and I'm waiting
Trying
for
not to restrict it too much. Village, I kind of agree with. I don't like where you put a number of chickens in. I think roosters are a problem in close to that area, so that probably does need to be in there. I don't think we need to say how many square footage the enclosure needs to be particular. I think the township already addresses how far from neighbors and things like that it has to be, so that's why I was thinking we already were addressing it there. But
Are you on board with no slaughtering in the neighborhood?
No outdoor. We can do it in your garage.
Well,
I don't think you really need to put that in there.
Well, because even then again,
like, what are you
so
gonna do
now, like,
with
I
hunters?
grew up on East Holly Road on 10 acres, and my parents did slaughter chickens. We had 100 chickens at a time, and we did slaughter chickens. Now, that might not be good for, neighbor to neighbor on Quick Road, but on East Holly Road, on a large parcel, that.
Sure.
With your wild, deer or what?
I was going to say, yeah, what about the
Where are we
deer?
going to stop on some of those
Right,
things?
yeah.
Hang 'em up.
Well, are you breaking the rules then?
I think if we get this in the news, we can get a much bigger audience than this.
People are incredibly passionate about chickens, right, in both directions.
That's what I worry about. If we get too many things in here, it's going to get too restrictive.
Well,
but I'm glad
well,
you
right,
brought it up to
right
the-
now it's completely restricted.
Yeah, I know, that's what I think.
I don't think we should
And Glenn, I
restrict
think
it.
the direction that I would recommend is almost loosening it up for
Yeah.
your larger lots.
I agree.
Right.
Oh no, I think 6.
100%.
If you've got 2 acres, I think you certainly could have more than 6 chickens. I don't.
Yeah, the
that's,
simple thing was just taking out C1, which is basically saying that your lot size is limited to 2.5 acres. And you already have other restrictions in there of how far the waste and the feed and all those kind of things are already dealt with in there. It would keep it pretty simple.
So
I go for simple. The more things you get here, the more complicated.
Yeah,
they're
I mean,
always,
the
a neighbor doesn't
number
like you can always find something that you don't quite match with. Is the problem.
As far as a code enforcement aspect, I would like to see, as far as the residential zoning that Mike was talking about, we would want to address the number, because while everything is most positive coming from this aspect, you will have those that can probably fit 100 into a half acre.
Oh, easily.
So, that might be a consideration that you do
You get
want
100
to
in the garage easily.
address it by zoning.
Might not want them.
But then would not be addressed by, like, you're having to house them and different things in that nature, or no?
So, again, I think, at least for a start, right, work off the village ordinance for your R1 and R2, and then loosen up for the larger, what you currently have for the larger lots. Then it gets back to character, right? What's the character? These larger lots, they are rural, right?
Yep.
Why are you restricting chickens? It
Absolutely.
doesn't quite, make sense. But your single-family residential, right? These are not supposed to be farming operations, right? Once you start allowing farming operations, that creates additional issues with the state for protecting your right to farm act, ability to enforce certain types of uses or prevent certain types of uses in the zoning. Once you start allowing, farming operations, right? So if you just remove the restriction on the number of chickens, then that could cause unintended consequences.
Do we want to keep using the word chicken, or are we going to go with fowl to allow for turkeys and ducks and?
Yeah, I think class 3 is what we're talking about.
Okay.
Right.
Just
so
making
it's
sure.
Rabbits and
You just have to weigh your chickens, make sure they're not over 75 pounds.
yeah.
I do. I'd like to see that chicken.
Well, I'm going to Zender's on Friday, so
Ah.
I'll let you know.
So we do have a formal motion on the floor. Who made it? You made. I made it.
You made it.
I made the motion. You
Supported.
seconded it to ask Mike to present something to us at the next meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Moving on to reports. Usually I pick on Glenn first, but we'll start with AC today.
Oh, wow. No report.
Really? Pat.
Nothing.
No, nothing.
So you're back to me anyway.
I'm back to you anyway. So.
I really don't have anything, I guess. Hopefully our audience realize we are concerned. It's just that we can't do a whole lot about Holly Hills, as far as we've been told all the way through. So that's the concern. Hoping that you could have some success, because I think it is the best for everybody involved to have them hook up to water and sewer. I think it's extremely expensive, and so that's probably why they don't want to do it if they aren't forced to. Runoff is always a concern. I think hopefully you can get DEQ to listen to you, because that is an issue, but water has to go someplace too, so you have to do something with it. So I guess that's my few words.
I would second that for sure. And then also the Holly Area Youth Coalition is going to be having a color run this Saturday. So I'd just like to put that out there for anybody who would like to attend.
What time is that?
That starts at 9 a.m. There will be a Zumba warm-up if anybody wants to come. So that will be going on this Saturday.
And you leave, so we have color. Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna be throwing color after the Zumba warm-up. So once you run by Stat Fitness, so yeah, it should
Isn't
be
that
fun.
the Holidays deal?
Yes, it is in collaboration with Holidays. So please come out and join us for that.
That page.
Oh no! For you guys, in case all of you didn't see this, October 2nd in Frankenmuth is an all-day. Wow. All-day conference put on by the Michigan Townships Association. If any of you guys would like to go, see Karen or George, and they will get you registered. We went to a shorter one than this a few weeks ago that talked about Open Meetings Act and all kinds of other things, and had a really good meal, and it was well worth the time. Football coaching is going to make it where I can't attend, but strongly recommend it. Other than that, I guess my comments on the Holly Hills thing at this point is, it was said, we are listening. We are looking into exactly how we're going to submit our recommendations to the 5 agencies. Questions have been asked, but the truth is we can't force them to answer, and in some cases we can't legally compel them to answer, and that's something that, whether we all like it or not, is unfortunately just the way it is. We did get the township board did get the recommendation from the township attorney, which was made public in its entirety. If any of you have not seen that, you can pick it up at the township office.
I made copies and packets of the judgment along with all of the contact information for each one of the agencies. They're right next to the agendas.
Okay, thank you. I would encourage everyone in this audience, everyone who's listening to this on camera, and anybody who's got opinions on this, to bombard those offices with letters. And don't stop. Because the fact of the matter is, what you're coming at us with, it's not, we'll listen, and we are listening, but it's unfortunately not the right place. And truthfully, the township board isn't the right place. It has to go to those agencies. Because no matter, with with some limitations, basically on policing and whatnot, the buck is going to stop there. So I would bomb them and bomb them and bomb them with letters, and I did say with letters, and phone calls and whatever other forms of communications you guys have at your disposal, until they get so tired of hearing from you that they're going to be forced to respond. And this is an election year. Contact those folks who are running for governor, running for Congress, running for county commissioner. Drag them here to see what you guys are talking about. They want your votes. Their success as an elected official is going to depend on your opinions of what their values are and how they respond to you. So there is leverage that you as citizens have that we don't have because that consent agenda is sitting in our laps. And so I appreciate all of your passions. I have told you all on the record, off the record, I'm an environmentalist. I support your concerns about water and everything else. If I could tie myself to a tree and stay there until they promise to shut the runoff off, I would. But the reality is the bulldozer would just run me over. And it's metaphorically running the township over. So that's my comments on that. And on a positive note, Friday night, 7 p.m. at Holly High School, we are playing one of our arch rivals, Linden. And it's also youth football night, so we're going to have a bunch of kids out there in uniform, cheerleaders, football players. We had a great win against Owasso last week. Looking forward to playing Linden this week, and I can tell you those kids have been working their butts off all summer, and I would encourage you to get out and support them. So that's all I've got.
That October 2nd date, that's the same day as our meeting, right? So
yes, but it ends at, I think, 4 o'clock. So you would be well fed and then sleep. Yes, and then I'm sleeping. I mean, concentrating at our meeting here. So, well, you fill yourself full of chicken and turkey. That's tends to be the next step. So with that, we will move back into public comment. Again, please state your name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. So. Always go with the man in the hat first.
You bet. Pashota, 16490 Tucker Road. If I were a property owner building a new house and there was a sewer in front of my house, the state regulation says I have to hook up to that sewer. If I have a septic system and it defaults, I still have to hook up to that sewer. I'm asking you guys to investigate the defaults of the DEQ on that plant and get in writing what they've done to correct that. That green lake is coming near you. Okay, I'm telling you the truth. It's going to be in the Mill Pond. It's going to be in Lacey Lake. All right? If you're involved with health and welfare, you guys can do something. I know you have a what they call consent judgment, but are you afraid to get sued? Are you afraid not to be able to fight this? Listen, I put $177,000 in this in 1992. Not putting any more. It's time for you guys to step up. That's all I'm saying. Pictures don't lie. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once? Yep.
Twice. Not to pick on you, Glenn. Mark Taylor, 15566 Falk Road. Not to pick on you, Glenn, but you're saying, I wish you guys luck, and I wish you this, and I wish you that. Dale Smith was the township supervisor for many, many, many years, and he had the consent judgment 2 years before he took office. There are tens of letters in that file where Dale Smith has generated a letter. This is exactly my point. You guys still have policing powers. You still can write letters. Since we've been bringing this up 6 months ago, there's not been one letter generated by our elected officials to fight this. Read the consent judgment. It actually says you can. And even if you couldn't write and request things, you can request things from that developer on a neighborly basis, including number 4, moving that entrance from 3 homes that don't need to see 1,000 cars a day. I was told recently, Oakland County has already approved the plans. We can't do anything about it. Well, we're going to be at Oakland County's meetings. We're going to be at other meetings. And we are going to make our voices heard. But that doesn't mean you guys can't. I don't want to hear my board say, I wish you guys luck. I've put a lifetime into this in the last 6 months. And you know what? I don't like seeing my board say, you guys. You still can write letters. Dale Smith wrote 50 to 100 letters. He had a consent judgment against him. I may employ him to sue to get that moved. Okay, on a much nicer note, you do not want commercial wind turbines in Holly. I travel for a living. I see these farms of these things, and they are huge. You see them going down the road on 2 trucks, extended trucks. They would be the absolute worst thing you'd want in Holly. They're cool to look at for about 15 minutes, and after that, you don't want to farm these things in Holly. Everybody would look at those and go, I'm not buying a house there. And we have lots of open areas. Most likely it won't happen. 2, if you have a need to generate enough garbage to require a commercial dumpster in a residential area, you should be moving your business to a commercial area. I run a home-based business. I generate a bag of garbage a week. If I was generating a dumpster full, I would expect to have to move that to a commercial area. Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice.
No, I've got to speak. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please do. Stacy, you're next.
Sandy Martin, 106 Fairfax Court in Holly Hills. Again, listening to all of you, we've come here for help, we've come here for suggestions to support us of our concerns, and I felt like just a few minutes ago we just got slapped in the face. Either you don't want this crowd of people here and getting up and speaking about the concerns, not only the homeowners on Falk Road, not only the runoff of the water, not only the traffic. For God's sakes, I don't understand. You have a dirt road and you're talking on a daily basis of 800 cars plus? Eagle Road doesn't have that. Tyndall Road doesn't have that. But you're going to allow Holly Hills to expand and take 100 vehicles a day on a small dirt road? What about their houses? I'm just floored at the reaction that was just said a few minutes ago. We'd like to do more for you, but guess what? Adios. Goodbye. Well, as it was said, we elect you people too. And we're looking for you guys to help us the best way you can to remedy this situation. They can't even take care, and I've stated this before. And Glenn, I don't know if you went through that area that I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago. Those homes, those 84 homes that they put in, is literally not anything that any of us would want to go and live in right now. They're trash. And this expansion, you think that it's going to be nice like the first phase that went in? People paid a lot of money for their homes. They have garages. That 84 homes do not. And there is no room for a garage. All I can say is I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed.
Stacy Taylor, 15566 Falk Road. I actually very much appreciate that you did listen, and I did hear some positive things come out of tonight. I know that a lot of us are very frustrated that have spent a lot of time and effort looking into this. I was told not only by George Cullis, but by Senator Robertson when he sat on my front porch, find something. Health, safety, welfare, some drinking law, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Find something that will allow us to untie our hands, because the drinking water, the waterways, the safety of these citizens are more important than somebody making a lot of money. And at this point, we're still stuck in that spot. I get that. But I also want you to put into perspective, these people right here that live in the park, they're having issues in there with being able to fight fires, with being able to have ambulances get in and turn around because it's so dense in there. You know, I looked at Meritus's or Holly Hills' website, and they say we've got basketball courts and we've got a swimming pool. Swimming pool capacity is 75 people. That basketball court is one hoop on top of a parking lot that's got paved lines with a dumpster sitting right by it. It's not full court. And that's how they promote themselves. They say, hey, let's put a gold star on these people's houses and say, look at these beautiful homes. And they do have beautiful homes. But if you drive on those back roads, they're not. They're 8 feet apart. There's bikes and stuff sitting everywhere. Their lawns all grown up. I mean, they're just so tight. And if you look at the plans, it's the same thing. The front of the house, the front ones look all right, but every other one is bam, 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 bam. Long term, that's not going to be a really great situation that's going to cultivate good citizens that are happy to have a yard they can sit in, because you can hear your neighbor flush the toilet, and I'm hearing that from people that have talked to me. Okay, beyond that, we have a lot of concerns with safety and the levels that everybody's been speaking. I hope we can get some answers. I hope we can get some agencies to fulfill the 203, to get the drain commission. I mean, there's all these people are saying we don't police it. That's not our job. They police themselves. One of the ladies that was here and has been here a couple different meetings, back when Zabo owned that park, they falsified the water records. They submitted falsified water. They supposedly bought it at Holly. There was 97 violations before 2014, most of them under Joseph Zabo. Every owner of that park has shown the ability to fail, to discharge bad and effluent water, and whether it was mechanical error, whether it was personal error, or whether it was indifference. And that's why they are now back to Highland Treatment treating the system versus the person they had before. The DNR knows that there, and I have a name and I don't have it with me, knows that there's truckloads of cement in there. And you know what their response was? It'll cause more damage to pull it back out. Doesn't seem like these people should be responsible for having 2 more additions and another 450 if they can't control what's happening with just 274. Thank you.
Anybody else? No?
John Ewan, 15460 Falk Road. I've lived on Falk Road almost 27 years. I want to go to bat for my neighbors, the Taylors, on probably the most felt thing they're going to feel. When the Section 2 of this goes in, the egress or the entryway onto Falk, I don't know if you know where that is, but that's, we call it Mr. Foster's Road. There's a little road, and right across the street evidently is where that's going to come in. And supposedly it's been approved, but I'm saying let's backpedal a little bit. Have a little faith. Contact these people. Ask them, please, can't you move it down? I mean, you don't have to threaten them, just ask them. They're going to have to, you know, they're probably going to stay there. It's a beautiful home. They have gardens, and, you know, they're living their dream right now. You know, and it's taken them, they're almost 60 years old. I'm almost 60. Well, okay. But they've worked hard their whole lives to get a nice home like that in Holly Township. They're going to have to, when the cars come out of Holly Hills, when this new egress is built, they're going to have, you know, bright car lights, and Mrs. Foster too. She's in her late 80s. When they come out, they're going to be flashing these homes like, you know, all night long. People go places in the dark, you know, and so if we can, I know that there was a couple of things you guys were going to try to do as far as, I forget what they were now, but could you please add to the list, at least contacting and say, hey, can't we move that thing? My dad was an engineer. I'm not an engineer, but my father was. And I know things can change. Make a request. You have more power. You know, I've been hearing that, like, you're trying to tell us we have more power than you. And I don't know. Maybe it's 50-50, but you guys are a public entity. You guys are, a local government. I'm just some guy. Mark's just some guy. You guys are more than that. You guys can write a letter. You can get, generate something. Please do something. And that egress, that easily can be moved one way or the other, where they come out where there's some property or whatever, but it's not right in their front window. So is that something that could be asked? I'm gonna ask you guys. Is that something that could be asked of this Meritus or whoever it is?
I'm not going to get into a back and forth now because it's not protocol, but I have no problem answering the question. Actually, Mike, can I put you on the spot to just explain? There's things that have to do with creating intersections.
So best practices for access management, right? So talking about where curb cuts are, where driveways, where roads go. The best practices is to create intersections. And so you have an existing road, a new road would line up directly with that. It minimizes, once you start offsetting it, right, you start increasing the opportunity for traffic conflicts from people turning out of both directions and incoming and outgoing traffic. So the county has standards, right? So if there's an opportunity to line them up, that is where the requirement is going to be. And those are from best practice standards. Those are for the county, for the state, and essentially from the federal level. So that location was chosen based on those best management practices.
I have a question. Sorry. What you just said, how that could create people to run into each other. If that driveway is right in front of their entrance, wouldn't that create that situation?
It's about aligning. When you have a road and a road, when they're offset, where you have the turn movements from going in the opposite directions. That's when you're more likely to have a head-on collision.
It's a driveway.
But so it's my understanding that there's multiple homes that access it. Is that correct?
Well, we have an access to. Well, we have two entrances. So we have an entrance onto the walk. We have an entrance onto Harry and Susan's driveway. So it's really Harry and Susan's driveway that we also want to turn out.
But so when you're looking at how it functions, right? There's multiple homes that have access to that drive.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's just one home.
All right, well, it's something that we could look at, but it's my understanding that it's been described as a, for lack of a better word, a private road.
Okay. 450 homes versus one. That's not
So, all right. So to answer the overall question, yes, we can ask the question, and actually we have asked the question, and that's the answer we got. However, they aren't here tonight to ask the question to on the record. And in the same way that I looked the guy in the eye and asked him to tell me about Phase 4, I would be more than happy to ask them the question there. Legally, they don't, at this point, from our understanding, they don't have to explain Phase 4 to us because it's not part of the site plan that they're approving. And legally, right now, they do not have to move the driveway. I have no problem asking the question, and I'll ask them any pertinent questions. But again, they're not here tonight for me to do that. So.
When could you do that, though?
As soon as they show up here to present something to us. I have a list of questions for them. But again, they're not here tonight. The answer to that is the ball's in their court right now. If they want to And there were some very serious concerns that were brought up at the meeting that Mike, George, and myself attended at NACFA. The fire department is very adamant that right now the water pressure does not meet safety standards. So, again, we are doing things. You know, so we have that pull right now. How far and how hard we can pull, I'm not an attorney. But we are doing things. We are listening. Nobody here, we understand that there are safety concerns, and we are trying to figure out the best way to address them. So, but they aren't here tonight, so we can't ask. I'm not trying to get them on the phone and asking questions that way. That becomes a he said thing. So I would rather get them here, look them in the eye. You all will be here. You'll hear the same answers I'm hearing. But I can't force them to come. Okay, it's, like I said, the ball's in their court right now. They can't do anything until they go through the steps. And if they want to drag this out till next year, we can't force them to come in sooner. And quite frankly, that gives you guys more time too to do and contact what you said to us about the road and the traffic. I hear you, but go to the Oakland County Road Commission meeting and say the same thing. That's where we can't change. They've got their approvals. We can't change that. There's nothing legally we can do to make them overturn that. You get a room full of concerned citizens in there who are not bound by a consent judgment. I appreciate everything you said. I don't disagree with what you're saying. What I'm just simply honestly saying is that we aren't the people that those words need to be addressed to. I'll listen. We'll all listen. We are all hearing you. But we right now cannot change that. If you go to the road commission meeting and talk them into changing it, I don't know if you'll have any luck or not, but you certainly have a better shot there than you do here. And that doesn't mean we don't want you here, because I've made it very clear I like having a room full of people here. I want people engaged and who care about what's going on in their community.
Is Meredith always apprised of the meetings?
Yes, as far as do they know when the meeting is? Yes. Yeah. They sent us a message asking us to table it tonight because they were not prepared to move forward. Yeah. Oh yeah, they know. The township staff is in constant communication with them. So.
I would point out too, when you complain about something, you need to give alternative. So if you're saying the driveway shouldn't be there, to me, you talk to the road commission, you say there's a better place. I was shocked when I saw the trip mobile home park that they weren't required to have it more than one entrance to begin with. They only had one entrance on the paved road. It seemed like they would have been required to have more than one to begin with. I was shocked that they didn't have. But that's already happened, so I don't think we can do that. But try and give an alternative, something else you can do. The problem with the driveway issue, I sympathize, is it's not health, safety, or welfare. If you can get something safety, that's the thing, just the size of Falk Road, but if it's just a driveway issue, I'm not sure you're going to get very far with it. I can sympathize with you, but I'm not sure you're going to get very far with it. I'm talking with them just as developers, but I know they have their plans run up, and it costs them money to change plans, so they don't like doing those things. It doesn't mean they can't. They don't like doing those things.
Give us a price, we'll have a big sale.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? You can't. Technically, you're only supposed to be able to have one. Yeah, you can't go twice. We'll talk after the meeting. Go ahead.
Lisa Ewan, 15460 Falk Road. Again, 450 public versus 3 private. We'd like it in writing. This is received at a public hearing meeting dated September 20th, 1993. This was written by Barbara Renish, an old neighbor of ours for many years. She writes, "You must not overlook the danger of the potential health impacts that may arise if you place thousands of human beings across from a closed landfill that is already under investigation for contamination." Attaches the recent newspaper article discussing the landfill. And this has been covered before. but it's I believe it's the Holly Herald. It's dated August '93. Contamination likely. Village initiates study of old dump site. It talks about a Tim Carpenter, president of Geodynamics consultant. The abandoned site is on Falk Road, still is. We drive by it every day. We wonder what's still down there. And the thought that many, many others are going to be coming and living in that area along with us, and what the impact can be. Metals are mentioned being down there. My dad could testify what's been dumped in there. He's lived here all his life and known that the farmers in the area have done that kind of thing because that was what they did. That's the history of it. The Tim Carpenter, president of Geodynamics, says that there's a potential environment problem. Development could have, in the area, could have the effect of punching a hole in the protective clay layer, and any wells necessary for housing, especially large wells, could have the effect of changing underground water flows. There's very little doubt in my mind, he says, that a high draw well would cause problems. I would not like to see that done until I saw a very good hydrogeological survey. I don't want to see any changes in that system until we see what that system is. And we've never gotten any answers, the residents on Falk Road in the area. It says that they plan to drill 11 preliminary or tests of 11 wells. They did that, supposedly, with monitoring wells. We never got any reports on any monitoring. Collect and test surface water samples from nearby properties. We personally have never had anybody knock on our door and tell us that they did any testing and samples nearby and what those samples showed. I would like some, I know it's the village's property, but we need to start getting this open and talked again. And there was supposed to be gauges set on the ponds and sites at Rice Lake and Bush Lake. Whatever happened to that? So I'm concerned that there's contaminants just looming, and I'd like that addressed respectfully. Thank you.
Anybody else who has not spoken? Going once, going twice. Angela, I see you sitting over there. No? Okay. So if nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:31 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
So what would
meeting exactly that? Try to pull it to it once it wouldn't fit ever. That would create
I don't see that.
Driveway and driveway. The conflicts are coming this way and this way.
Oh, I thought you were saying out and out. They're both trying to pull out the same time.
No, because if they're all set, they're both turning at the same in the same lane to get right. So that's where the head-on collisions come. Because your sight distance is wonky.
Yeah.
It's a technical term.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what they try to avoid. You line it up. There's no head-on issues. It's just.
I had a nice little bag that didn't fit in there. Huh? You probably fit in this one. And this is only from January.
I like your shoes. Where'd you get them?
That's the fun part, right?
I found the fun part.
Yeah, they're wedges. I need wedges, so I love wedges. Every wedge is I don't know. Who thought that was a good idea?
I know, right? Obviously it was a warrant. Listen, it's Sunday. I don't want to right? Better do that. Guess what? I'm a girl. I know. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think it would help.
Thank you.
That's the point. That's a strong point. Mr. Kernan fought
I think Friday. I think.
Well, you did. Years have passed, but that's not.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, this is done by a company.
Well,
Yeah, it's not done. It's not done by an organizer. It's done by a management effort. We can just, I'll call me when you have a chance to talk. Or if you want to come by the office, we can talk about it, but yeah, that's not an appraisal. All right? I did, and that's what that's doing is just really
some of that green is happening because of that issue. So I think we need to do a longer period of time or something.
My whole point is they had 14 dogs, okay, in 1 year. And they're using,
well, yeah, that's the point, yeah.
They're using 70 trucks to pull that out of there. How are they going to take care of the rest of it? That's my point.
Well, that's what I think is the most effective.
Yeah, my other point was about the law. If I have something that goes bad, you guys won't let me fix it, I gotta go to the sewer. You guys,
Everything.
Everything?
Everything.
So you're busy.
I guess.
Yeah, I know.
And it's not us anyway, it's the town board.
You guys are on my side of the swamp, okay? The meter that water.
I need to take a picture.
And see if, hey, it is or it isn't.
I don't know the feasibility of that. Ability to do that, but that's the point. I think you have a strong thing is the runoff from that.
Well, all I'm asking you with the board to do is approach it. What's that? That's a good name.
We have. I basically was asking each meeting why not hook on water and sewer, and I never got an answer from it. So I think it's money, but in the long term, they'd be a lot better off.
And the reality is they don't have to give us that answer. I mean, that's the problem. I
understand.
But we've asked, as I said, we've asked the question.
I think in our formal recommendation at the end will be definitely we think it's